The anime kicks off in Rome, the heart of the Roman Empire, back in 54 BC. We meet a 15-year-old kid named CESTVS, who's a soldier. His family was wiped out by the Roman Empire, leaving him all alone, so he ended up at a school to train boxing. There, he worked as a servant while honing his boxing skills alongside other kids like him. One day, the principal, Valin, gathered all the kids and announced, "Pair up for a fight. The winner stays, and the loser, well, they won't make it." Unfortunately, CESTVS' opponent turned out to be his buddy Rocco. Just then, CESTVS' coach, Zafar, showed up and started rooting for him. But CESTVS didn't want to go up against Rocco since they were friends. The fight kicked off and Rocco charged at him, but CESTVS dodged and tried to hold back. He kept avoiding hurting Rocco until he had no choice but to land a hit to end the match, and he ended up winning. Valin ordered the soldiers to take Rocco out, and CESTVS couldn't believe his eyes. He yelled out in protest. Valin then told all the winners they'd become boxers under his command, and anyone who scored 100 wins would earn their freedom. CESTVS thought, "I need to fight for my freedom," and pushed himself harder in training with Zafar. One day, Zafar informed him about an upcoming event where fighters from different schools would compete in front of the emperor. CESTVS was set to take part, but he warned him that the crowd would decide his fate. If he lost, the audience would call for the emperor's soldiers to take him down. When the day of the festival arrived, CESTVS found himself separated from his classmates. While wandering around, he bumped into a kid named Rasa, who helped him find his way back. After some time, CESTVS found himself in the ring for the scheduled fight, with the young emperor Nero watching closely. At just 17, Nero had taken the throne following his father's passing and was reluctant to be at the festival due to his aversion to violence. As the match kicked off, CESTVS' opponent thought it would be a walk in the park, assuming he could easily defeat a kid. But as the fight unfolded, CESTVS dodged the attacks with finesse, striking back with accuracy, ultimately claiming victory. The crowd erupted in cheers for CESTVS, but Nero was not impressed with the opponent's performance and ordered his execution. The opponent begged for mercy, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. CESTVS, feeling a pang of sympathy, also asked for leniency, but that request was shot down too. The emperor's guards carried out the execution, leaving CESTVS momentarily saddened. Later on, Nero called CESTVS over and said, "You've made quite an impression." CESTVS was taken aback to realize that the emperor was just a kid like him. He also met Nero's mother, Aegina, and his aide, Dmitri, who revealed that he and Zafar had a history of fighting each other. While hanging out with Nero, CESTVS witnessed another fight in the arena featuring Rasa, the boy who had guided him earlier. As the battle began, CESTVS noticed Rasa using moves that didn't resemble boxing at all. He thought to himself that Rasa wasn't a traditional boxer. Dmitri chimed in, explaining that Rasa was his son and practiced a martial art called pankri instead of standard boxing techniques. Rasa was incredibly strong, and after the match, Nero invited both Rasa and CESTVS to join him for a chat. But when Agrippina spotted them together, she insisted they should face off. Nero was against it, but Agrippina was persistent, leading to Dmitri and Zafar starting their own fight. Despite being hurt, CESTVS launched his attacks, but Rasa managed to defend himself against all of CESTVS' moves. Rasa managed to fend off all of CESTVS' attacks and ultimately came out on top in the fight. Agrippina was furious with Nero for not ordering their deaths, so she stormed off and Nero chased after her. Once the fight wrapped up, Dmitri was disappointed in Rasa for not giving it his all. Meanwhile, CESTVS and Zafar decided to leave the area. A few days later, the school where CESTVS trained under Valin went up in flames, prompting him to leave Rome for Pompeii. This choice was influenced by a guy named Fabers, whom CESTVS and Zafar had met along with his crew. CESTVS got to know Fabers and his assistant, Noshka. When CESTVS stepped into Fabers' palace, he spotted a fighter named Aiden, who caught his eye due to his unusual training methods. Noshka filled CESTVS in on Aiden's reputation as an undefeated powerhouse. That night, CESTVS woke up needing to use the bathroom and stumbled upon a stunning girl named Spina. He found out she was wealthy and lived in the palace, and she also mentioned being Faber's daughter, the guy who had bought CESTVS and his friends. The next morning, a woman from the city approached Spina, saying some fighters had taken over her bar, stolen from her, and were refusing to leave. She pleaded for CESTVS' help, and he, along with his friends, headed to the bar to confront the intruders. They fought hard, but a massive fighter ended up attacking Sista. In the chaos, the intruders managed to escape. Sista couldn't keep up, but then Noshka showed up with Emodin, who took on the giant and defeated him. Spina expressed her gratitude to Emodin, revealing that she had made a deal with him years ago. If he could win 50 fights in a row, he would earn his freedom. Aiden was close to that goal with 48 victories, and Sista found this information fascinating. Noshka shared that Spina had a deal with Emodin, and Fabers were in the loop too. Aiden was on a roll with 48 wins, just needing 2 more to break free. Sista was determined to tackle his fear of facing tougher opponents. He later confided in Zafar about his struggle. Whenever he squared off against someone bigger or stronger, he felt defeated before the match even started. Zafar promised to teach him a finishing move that would boost his confidence to take on anyone, no matter their size or strength. Later on, Spina called for Sista. She was impressed by his abilities and offered to buy his freedom, wanting him to be her assistant in Rome. But Sista turned her down, saying he didn't want to leave his teacher and friends, nor did he want to be bought again. He was determined to earn his freedom through his own hard work and victories. Spina was not happy with his decision and thought he was being foolish. She then contacted Emodin, telling him that their upcoming fight, just days away, would be against Sista. She wanted Emodin to take him down, and he was on board with that. Sista and his crew kicked off some serious training for the big fight ahead. When fight day rolled around, Spina watched as Emodin squared off against Sista in the arena. Idan had metal gauntlets on, and the crowd saw Sista as just a kid, thinking Aiden would wipe the floor with him. The match started with Sista throwing quick punches, looking for a chance to strike. Aiden blocked him with those gauntlets until Sista spotted a weak spot and landed a hit on Emodin, knocking him down. Everyone was shocked to see that Sista was tougher than they had assumed. Idan retaliated, hitting Sista in the chest and then landing a punch to the side of his head, sending Sista to the ground. The audience thought Sista was done for, but even after falling, Sista pushed himself back up, ready to go again. Emodin was dragging out the fight to work on a finishing move. Just when Sista was about to make his move, Emodin came down hard with a finishing blow from above, known as the decapitating blow. Back then, boxing had different rules, and that hit was totally legal. Sista went out cold, but while he was down, Aiden shocked everyone by hitting him again. Sista, still aware but a bit dazed, couldn't defend himself as Emodin landed 2 more punches. Sista's memory got fuzzy from the hits, and he struggled to remember anything. Aiden thought he had it in the bag, but to his surprise, Sista slowly got back up. Even with his memory a bit scrambled, he recalled a finishing move Zafar had taught him and knew he had to use it. Suddenly, Sista charged again, but he tripped, giving Aiden another chance to hit him. Still, Sista pushed through the pain from the broken ribs Aiden had given him. The crowd couldn't believe Sista was still standing and fighting back against Aidan's blows. Noshka, who had been observing, reminisced about the first time he laid eyes on Sista and Aiden when they were just orphan kids. They had always hoped to be picked by someone from their group. Then one day, they found themselves at Faber's palace, where Spina announced she would only select one child to serve in the palace. The lucky one would get to live there, while the rest would have to fend for themselves on the streets, vying for the spot. After a series of tough battles among the kids, Noshka and Aiden came out on top and became palace servants. Noshka remembered how brave Idan had always been, but he also respected Sista's bravery. It was the first time Noshka had seen Idan in action, and he was really impressed by his fighting skills. Even though Idan got hurt, Spina ended up choosing both of them as servants, and they settled into life in the palace. Noshka snapped back to reality, fueled by Sista's fierce spirit. He started rallying support for Sista, and soon the crowd was cheering him on. The battle raged on, and Sista skillfully dodged a triple strike from Emodin, landing a solid hit to his face. But as he stepped back, Sista noticed a painful gash on his head, blood streaming down and blurring his left eye. Realizing it was time to finish things, he charged at Aiden again, aiming for his already injured ribs. Aiden tried to fight back, but Sista delivered a final crushing blow that took his head clean off. Aiden was down for the count, and while Sista emerged victorious, the crowd was split. Some shouted for Aiden's demise, while others begged for him to be spared. Spina stepped in, reminding everyone that there were plenty more fights ahead in the tournament. He recognized Aiden's courage and, despite the loss, chose to set him free. CESTVS had passed out from sheer exhaustion and his injuries. When he came to, he found himself in a bed with his friends around him, but Zafar was nowhere to be seen. Curious about the powerful finishing move he had just pulled off, which reminded him of a technique from a mysterious mentor he had years ago, CESTVS asked about it. Noshka revealed that he had also learned the same move from a strange teacher named Democritus, who had helped him gain strength. It dawned on CESTVS and Zafar that they both had been trained by Democritus and shared similar skills. When they asked where the teacher had gone, Zafar said he had vanished after giving them their strength. A few days later, the tournament wrapped up, and Noshka let CESTVS know that Lord Fabers wanted to express his gratitude in person. Lord Fabers had sponsored their participation in the tournament. CESTVS, Zafar, and their friends were thankful for the chance but chose to leave Lord Fabers' palace. As they stepped outside, they were greeted by the townspeople, who cheered for CESTVS and celebrated his win over Emmedan. Soon after, they met a guy named Driscoll, who had bought them. They all headed to a site where new roads were being built. There, Zafar had them digging in the dirt every day as part of their training. Even though the heavy tools were tough to handle, they pushed through this intense training for 2 months, dealing with injuries and fatigue. One day, 2 messengers from the Imperial Palace showed up and told CESTVS that the Emperor wanted the strongest fighters to gather for a big tournament in 3 months. The winner would snag a hefty prize, and for CESTVS, that could mean his freedom. He was all in for the tournament and planned to team up with his buddy Rock, who was skilled in the arts. In the small arena, CESTVS went up against a fighter named Zane in the first round. He moved quickly, landing hits on Zane and easily taking him down. In the next round, CESTVS faced another opponent and defeated him just as effortlessly. Throughout the tournament, CESTVS started to realize how valuable his training at the mall had been, even if it had left him worn out. He caught wind of a strong boxer named Felix, who was also in the tournament. Felix had heard about CESTVS' strength, and both fighters could feel that a showdown was coming. CESTVS was eager to take on Felix and show off his new skills. As the third round of the tournament drew near, CESTVS felt his nerves kicking in. He started to grasp how crucial it was to train with a pickaxe, just like Zafar had mentioned. When CESTVS faced off against his third opponent, he landed a quick strike that knocked his rival out cold towards the end of the match. It hit him then that his training had really paid off. With only 4 fighters left in the semi-finals, including himself and Felix, the atmosphere was electric. Felix approached CESTVS and suggested that if they both won their next fights, they should meet in the final showdown. CESTVS was on board and Felix took off. The following day, CESTVS geared up for his semi-final match and breezed through it. Meanwhile, Felix was on the sidelines, studying CESTVS' moves and strength. He discovered that Zafar was CESTVS' coach and that Zafar had been a tough competitor before retiring due to a knee injury. Felix was set on taking down CESTVS to settle his own past defeats and show that he was the stronger fighter. Meanwhile, CESTVS was focused on his dreams of victory and the freedom that came with it. The day of the big showdown between CESTVS and Felix finally came, and both fighters stepped into the arena ready to throw down. As the match kicked off, they both played it safe at first. CESTVS went in for a quick strike, but Felix blocked it and mocked him for fighting in such a tight space. Then, Felix countered and hit CESTVS with his other hand. CESTVS was caught off guard, thinking he had dodged the hit, but Felix still got him. It hit CESTVS that he was up against a tough opponent in this cramped arena, and he knew he had to change his game plan if he wanted to win this important fight. Felix kept using the same tactic and managed to land another hit on CESTVS. He kept the pressure on until CESTVS found himself backed up against the edge of the arena. CESTVS was racking his brain for a way out when he realized his right ankle was hurt from Felix's first attack, making it hard for him to move. While he was figuring out his next move, he noticed that Felix was attacking from all angles but was leaving his center wide open. CESTVS took advantage of the moment and launched a surprise attack from the center, landing a hit on Felix. This shift in strategy caught Felix off guard, and he took some serious hits. CESTVS kept going for Felix's midsection, just like he did with Emmedan. He wore Felix down and made it hard for him to catch his breath. With Felix's guard down, CESTVS landed several punches to his face. In the end, he delivered a powerful strike to Felix's side, knocking him out cold. CESTVS came out on top, earning his spot in the tournament finals, but he was completely wiped out from the fierce fight. The next day, Felix went up to Cista and pushed him to really give it his all in the finals of the tournament, cautioning him not to mess it up. Once Felix was gone, Zafar hopped on a boat with Cista and his buddies to head over to Thylia, where the finals were set to happen. While they were on the way, Zafar shared that he had upped their training by tweaking the maul's strike hand, making it tougher to handle. One of Cista's pals asked why they were training so hard, and Zafar just crushed an apple in his hand like it was nothing, showing off the strength they had built up. When Cista arrived in Thylia, he ran into a bunch of other competitors, including Rusa, who seemed to have changed a lot since they last met and was clearly influenced by Emperor Nero. Rusa urged Cista to back out of the tournament, warning him about how brutal it could get, but Cista was set on sticking it out. The next day, all the fighters assembled in the arena, where Emperor Nero had some big news to share. And that is where this video ends. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel.